You're listening to a Weeby Geeks Network podcast.
This is why people want to hear about Disney and fall in love with Disney. It's the real world is too real. You need to go to the fantasy world where everybody is treated like a VIP and everything is taken care of, and you feel safe and you feel loved, and there's always some new surprise, so.
And we're all just happy little princesses.
That's about it.
Welcome.
What is this place?
Neverland.
We're going to bring ghosts from all over the world.
Join us.
The children are screaming.
And we guarantee them creaky doors and creaky floors.
Be sure to bring your death certificate.
Take your pixie out of your pockets, Neverlanders. Sprinkle some of that pixie dust around. Think your happiest thought, and let's fly away to Neverland. It's bound to be a little bit spooky, though, this week. I'll tell you why here in just a little bit. I, of course, am the head lost boy around here, Jeremy, but you can call me Spider-Pan because that's what they call me amongst the lost boys. You can get a nickname as well at neverlandpodcast.com if you decide you just want to join the Neverlanders. It's all in fun. I don't record any of your data. I just basically share what you share with me to everybody out there to let everybody know that we have a new Neverlander, which you could be a lost boy or a pixie. We don't have lost girls around here because girls are too clever. They don't get lost. We have something special, though, this week, because we're going to, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to hear from Jim Korkis about some of the making of Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. This is a movie that it didn't really start out as the hit that it has become. It wasn't a huge success, but it has grown quite the following, and basically we're all fans of it. In fact, it took me a while, I know, though. Before I was a fan, I had to watch it a few times before it really became something I really enjoyed. Because when I first watched it, it's like watching a series of music videos, and you can tell that the script was written after the songs, the way it's presented. There were good songs, but it seemed like it was lacking story, and the character I thought I was supposed to be rooting for, really, he's ruining my favorite holiday, Christmas. But when you start to kind of realize that Sally is the hero and you get behind Sally's story, that's what kind of got it for me. I'm like, see, Sally is our hero. She's the one that's really going to save Christmas. And after Jack realizes what he's done, he goes and he does set it right. And he's still likable characters. But it's just a weird, quirky movie, The Nightmare Before Christmas. And for the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk with Jim Korkis about this movie. So strap in. Carve your jack-o'-lantern, sit back, and enjoy my conversation with Jim Korkis.
To Disney and beyond.
Hey, Neverlanders. We have another returning guest. This is going to be fun, because it always is, and I always learn a whole lot. He's not quite a Disney legend, but maybe he should be. He knows pretty much everything anyway, right? So we were brought on to us Disney historian, Disney author, Jim Korkis. Hello again.
Hey, and thanks for that great introduction, but I will tell you that I know enough that I know how much I don't know. and again, one of the exciting things and frustrating things at the same time about Disney history is there are new things that are being discovered every single day, and this is just about history. It's not about, even Disney as it is today, because I tell people Disney today, its middle name is Jello, because things are in constant flux. Sometimes they'll announce something and never follow through on that, or sometimes something will pop up as a surprise, or sometimes things will disappear without any notice whatsoever. My gosh, the more I know, I have come to realize there's so much more that I don't know, and the frustrating thing is that I wish I had known some of these things when some of these people like Ward Kimball and Mark Davis and all of that were alive, where I could have asked them some of these questions. But at the time that I got a chance to interview them, I didn't know some of these things that they had done, and so other people didn't either. So lost that opportunity. So I'm glad for podcasts like yours where we can get this information out there and share that with people, because Disney is very bad at documenting things. Because they're so involved in getting things done and then getting on to the next thing that it never occurs to them that, boy, we should write down what we were doing and why we made these decisions and who was involved and all of this, because maybe somebody's going to be interested in that, and even as those of us who visit Disney theme parks and all that, we all just take it for granted, that, oh, that's there, that'll be there, and the next time we're there, where is that? Where did that go? The Muppets in Liberty Square in Magic Kingdom just ended October 5th, and nobody knew. Wait, you were going to end that show? The Mickey's of Hollywood store in Disney's Hollywood Studio just reopened after a rehab, and all of the Mickey figures that were in there for Steamboat Willie and for the band leader Mickey and for Sorcerer Mickey, all of those are gone now. So that people can just see more merchandise. But I thought, that'll always be there.
They've even recently changed the names of the foods in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge from having Star Wars names to being now it's just roast beef. What? Wait a minute. This used to be a roast alien, Yeah,
that's it, and so it's important to write these things down. It's important to save those guide maps and you better save those guide maps, because some of my sources are telling me that Disney's going to get rid of those, because of the cost of, printing and updating and all of that they'll just go where, again, you'll just have to have an app on your phone that'll have the map,
Oh, but it's such a great souvenir.
I like having something physical in my hands. I like having a physical map, even though they've reconfigured them now so that, wait a minute, is this the top or is this the bottom? What have they done here? But, it all comes down to money.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to, well, the guests won't miss that. Yes, they will.
Yes, they will.
I'm still missing the Golden Horseshoe Review show,
Yeah,
I still grumble about that, but but we talk about the parks. Sometimes we forget the Disney is a film company, and they've produced some important films and memorable films over the year, and as we come to the Halloween season, there are certain films that stick out, of course, like Hocus Pocus, which didn't really do well when it was first released, and of course today we're going to be talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas, and you don't realize that films like that, Hocus Pocus and Nightmare Before Christmas, is very, very courageous on the part of the Disney company.
Yeah.
And why is it courageous? Because many countries around the world do not celebrate Halloween or do not celebrate it the way that we do in the United States. Today, as a film company, you have to pay attention to, how is this going to work in a market like China or France or wherever, and here's all of these customs and traditions that we Americans just take for granted, and they're as strange to other countries as it would be if somebody said, "Oh yeah, there's a great new film coming out, and it's going to be celebrating Guy Fawkes Day." What? What the heck is that all about?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's even a risk because of what everybody expects from Disney is, when you look at like past films where they, Return to Oz, which was, dark and weird. And then two films I was hoping Disney Plus was going to have, but I didn't see them on the list on the announcements this week. But I would like to see The Watcher in the Woods and Something Wicked This Way Comes, which were too risky to put the Disney label on, which is why The Nightmare Before Christmas, let's put that out at Touchstone and let's just see what happens. And I love the fact that here
today, as long as you brought that up, although today it is considered officially a Disney Pictures film. There are only two Touchstone films that were then retrofitted to be part of the official Disney film legacy. And so Nightmare Before Christmas was one. The other, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh,
so only two Touchstone films. And again, both of them were released under Touchstone because, as you were saying, this is subject matter or even just the attitude is something that we don't want, really reflecting, Disney. This is not part of the Disney brand.
Yeah.
But again, they became so popular and so beloved that they are now officially considered Disney films. Whereas another Touchstone film, Dick Tracy, is still a Touchstone film. It's not considered an official Disney film.
Somehow or another, I can still see Walt up in whatever theater he was, where he's famously, after seeing Citizen Kane, and he cussed and say, they wouldn't let me make that kind of film.
No, well, and again, he told his son-in-law, Ron Miller, that, Walt had a screening room at his house, at his home. And one night, he screened for Ron and his wife, Diane Disney Miller, Mockingbird, To Kill a Mockingbird film. And at the end of it, Ron told me that Walt looked at him and he said, I wish we could make films like that. But he knew that at that particular time, an audience had certain expectations of a Disney film and wouldn't accept that. Now I think the expectations are a little broader, and I think the fact too that there is the Marvel film, the Marvel Cinema Universe, and the Star Wars universe, and those are tied to Disney. But those really wouldn't be considered part of the Disney brand back in the '60s and all of that.
Yeah.
Because there are certain attitudes, there's certain content that wouldn't be acceptable today. It's a little broader, but still, the bottom line is when you see the name Disney, you're expecting to see, a family film, and so that's one of the reasons why Nightmare Before Christmas was so odd. But we were talking about Ron Miller. It is thanks to Ron Miller that we got films like that because. At the Disney Studios, he said we've got to reinvent Disney, and so he brought in people like Tim Burton, who thought differently.
Boy, does he ever think different?
Well, in fact, they brought him in, and the first film they put him on was Fox and Hound, and they teamed him with Glenn Keane. And Burton admits, he says, I just could not draw cute Disney foxes. Mine looked like roadkill. And and so they ended up giving him sort of the distant shots, of the characters, and then the cleanup artist would go in and touch things up. And then they assigned him to be concept art with Andreas Deja for The Black Cauldron, and you would think, oh my gosh, this is going to be perfect for Tim Burton, this sort of dark film and all this. And so for a year, he literally sat in a room, doing this. And the reason they teamed him with Andreas Deja was so that they were hoping that Deja could go and take what Burton was drawing and make it more into that Disney style, that circular type style and all of that, so it could be usable. But Burton said, my gosh, after a year of sitting in the room drawing whatever I wanted, all of this weird stuff, I realized they're not going to use any of it, and they didn't. They didn't even adapt any of that stuff, and so there's a great book that Disney Editions could be putting out, which is all of the unused concept art for Black Cauldron, done by Tim Burton. But fortunately, there were people at the studio who saw, this guy has a talent. We're just not tapping into it. And so he was given a chance to make a little 7-minute stop-motion short called Vincent, which is the story of a boy who wants to grow up to be Vincent Price.
Yeah.
And Burton was in heaven because of the Disney name. They were actually able to get Vincent Price to come in and narrate it. Yeah. But again, it's out of the ordinary as a Disney short. It's very gothic. It's very, very gloomy, very emo. And in fact, people at Disney came in and said, "Well, can we change the ending so that we only see the mother? So at the end, could we have the father come in and take his son out, to a baseball game, and so suddenly he becomes brighter and happier?" And Burton was just appalled at that as an option, and so it wasn't changed, and it did well on the independent film circuit and the film festival circuit and all of that, but again, Disney just didn't know what to do with it, but or with the later live action film he did, Frankenweenie,
Yeah.
But at the time he was working on Vincent, he also wrote, because Vincent is done as a rhyming poem. There's sort of like he was trying to do a thing of Edgar Allan Poe meets Dr. Seuss type thing.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, he wrote another poem, a 3-page poem, and it featured Jack Skellington, and it featured his dog, his ghost dog Zero, that has that little glowing orange jack-o'-lantern as a nose, which I don't think many people immediately recognize, but once somebody tells you that, you take a look and you go, "Oh my gosh, look at that nose there." And Santa Claus, so it's only 3 characters, and it's a takeoff on The Night Before Christmas, because Burton, of course, grew up in Burbank, California. I grew up in Glendale, which was adjacent to Burbank, so I know what he was talking about. In Southern California there, you really only have 2 seasons, brown and browner. That's about it, And so for Tim Burton, the way he recognized when there was a new season is the decorations, that appear in the stores. You've got the Halloween decorations and all of that, and especially since you're in the Burbank area, which is near, TV studios and film studios and all that, you have these people who are doing up, these elaborate displays, and elaborate haunted houses, for kids to go through and all of that. I participated in a couple of them. They're just, holy cow! They're hard to describe. And but what Burton also saw was that the top-selling season, of course, is Christmas. That's when most retailers, make their money. That's when most books are sold. It's because people are either buying books for themselves as a gift, or they're buying them to give as a gift. So I'm going to remind your listeners, we're coming into the holiday season here now. Go to Amazon.com and look for Jim Korkis, and I've got a brand new book coming out next week, Vault of Walt, Volume 8, which is all about outer space stories, all the
Nice.
outer space stories that were in TV shows like the Ward Kimball things and films like Black Hole and Treasure Planet and comic books and all of that type of stuff. And so make my Christmas very merry and do that. So anyway, Burton is seeing that the Christmas season is where people are making their money. And so they keep extending, the Christmas season, And so suddenly it's encroaching on Halloween. You're skipping Thanksgiving entirely and going right from Halloween to Christmas. And so in Burton's mind, Halloween and Christmas just seem to be in the same, witch's cauldron, steaming there together. And then also at Christmas, Burton was of that age. He was born in 58. So, he was just a young kid when a lot of the Christmas specials popped up on TV, like How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and especially all those Rankin Bass stop-motion half-hour specials, like Rudolph and all of that, the Heat Miser and Cold Miser and all of that. So that's all just stirring in his head when he comes up with this. And so, he takes it to Disney, and Disney basically says, what are we going to do with this? And so Burton teamed up with a couple of friends, Henry Selick, who later directed Nightmare Before Christmas, and Rick Heinrichs, who did an awful lot of the design work and design work for a lot of his later live action films, and they went to different networks to try and pitch it as a half-hour Christmas special or Halloween special. Either one, whatever one you want to buy, this is it, And they got, no interest. They even tried to pitch it as a feature film that would have been hand-drawn animated, And but again, Burton says everybody kept looking at me like that odd relative that they let out of the attic, for the holidays, and then push them back in and don't want to talk about for the rest of the year. And around this same time, so we're talking about 84 right now, 1984. Michael Eisner comes in, and so when he comes in, and especially with Katzenberg, it's they're cleaning house. Ron Miller had kept some of these people on, in the hopes that they would, produce something different, and one of the people Ron Miller brought on was Brad Bird, who later went on to do The Incredibles and The Family Dog and so many of these other things, but he was let go too. Basically Eisner and all, just cleaned house, and a lot of people don't realize this, but Eisner was going to just eliminate the entire animation department because he says, we've got enough animated films, we can just keep re-releasing them, and it's too expensive, it's too time-consuming to do these. But the person who helped put Eisner in place was Roy E. Disney.
Of course.
And Eisner, basically went to him and he said, okay, it's time for payback now. What do you want, in exchange for, making sure I got this job? And Roy E. Disney said, give me the animation department. And Eisner was ecstatic because if he gave Disney the animation department and it fell apart, as everybody was predicting it would be at the hands of a Disney. And Eisner's hands would be clean. And unfortunately, this happened after Burton had been let go because Roy E. was like Ron, let's bring in these, outcasts, because they're the ones who can give us something, new. And Roy supported an awful lot of, out there projects, and that's the reason Destino, the Salvador Dali project, finally got done. That was from Roy Disney. The fact that Leslie Iwerks was able to do a book and a documentary on her grandfather, Ub Iwerks, was because Roy said, "Open up the archives so she can have whatever she wants," to do that. But poor old Tim Burton is out in the California cold at this particular point, and Paul Rubens.
Well, thank goodness for Warner Brothers, I guess.
Paul Rubens wanted to do a feature film about his character Pee Wee Herman, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, and he was looking around, and he wanted to find just the right director who had that same sort of slanted sensibility and all of that. And Shelley Duvall, who is an actress who had been in Burton's Frankenweenie.
Oh yeah, she was.
Told this is how things work in Hollywood. It's all these connections and schmoozing at parties and all that. She told Rubens,
I always think of her from The Shining and Popeye.
You should take a look at Frankenweenie. I think this guy is what you're looking for. And Rubens looked at it, and to seal the deal, Stephen King had seen Frankenweenie and loved it.
Oh, cool.
And had also mentioned, Burton to Rubens. And so, Burton had never directed, a feature film, for crying out loud. He had done a short, and in fact, he had done a short at a live action short at Disney on Hansel and Gretel that was so bad. How bad was it, Jim? It was so bad it was only shown once on Halloween night on the Disney Channel and never ever shown again.
It's buried underneath the archives right now.
A couple of years ago, a version was slapped together and run at a couple of Tim Burton film retrospectives. But yeah, it is so bad, and I've watched it, and you can see the design work is obviously Tim Burton, but it is just so slow, and he really doesn't get anything out of his actors. Frankenweenie, I love. I love, but if Rubens had seen Hansel and Gretel, well, too bad for that. But anyway, so Burton was brought in, and he did Pee Wee's Big Adventure, 1985. Remember, 84 he's let go. 1985, Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Huge hit. And he follows that with Beetlejuice in 88 and Batman, Tim Burton's Batman in 89, and Edward Scissorhands in 1990. This is 4 hits in a row, for crying out loud. And in the case of Batman, it just spawns that whole merchandising franchise and all of this. And so Jeffrey Katzenberg is over at Disney just licking his lips,
Yeah.
This is what we want. Katzenberg was hoping that Dick Tracy was going to take off like Batman, because you have those grotesque villains, you have that stalwart hero, this comes from a long-running comic, but what Katzenberg didn't take into account was nobody knew Dick Tracy. Nobody was reading.
I always read the Sunday Funnies.
And Dick Tracy was still appearing in the Sunday Funnies, but nobody was paying attention. And so Burton now is successful, and again, as you were saying, these are all Warner Brothers films. And Burton wants to break away from Warner Brothers because it's not good to keep all of your eggs in the same basket, right?
Yeah.
You want to work for other studios, so a safety net, because what if Warner Brothers goes belly up? A lot of studios were on the verge, of that happening. Some of them already had. All it took was just one bad film, and the whole studio was out of business because they're doing all these blockbusters. And so Burton decided he wanted to do something personal. So what he did was he had his lawyer, more or less, talk to Disney. Actually, it wasn't his lawyer; it was his agent. Talk to Disney and go, gee, is it possible I might be able to buy back, that 3-page poem, I did, and there were some sketches, and Rick Heinrichs had actually made up a model of the character to use, in those pitch meetings that they were doing. And, some studios will sell back things because that'll, recoup the amount of investment they put in that. But as soon as, Burton asked, all the sirens go off, Tim Burton is interested in this. What is, go down to the morgue, find what's down there, what is it we've got? We found gold. And so Katzenberg also wanted to corner the market in animation. He didn't want anybody else to have a successful animated film, and what had happened
Don Bluth,
is,
I'm sure, was making him nervous.
Yeah, well, what had happened is, American Tail had come out and had done well.
Yes.
And it's like, no, the only Disney features that should be out there should be coming, from Disney. And so Katzenberg thought, let's see if we can work out an arrangement with Burton. We won't sell him back the thing, but maybe he'll do it for us, And in fact, that's how Disney operates all the time. They went to George Lucas and said, gee, why don't you do a theme park attraction? And if you're happy with that, why don't you do a couple of films for us? And the same thing with James Cameron and Avatar. And, as long as we're talking Halloween, it was the same thing with Mel Brooks. The first choice for Disney Hollywood Studios was not Tower of Terror. Right. Eisner had gone to Mel Brooks and said, would you like to do, an attraction, for us? We want to do a scary attraction, and you did Young Frankenstein. And so Mel Brooks got involved, and he was going to do Castle Young Frankenstein at the Disney Hollywood Studios. And then that developed into Mel Brooks' Hollywood Horror Hotel, where you would be in these golf carts, which, again, are used in the back lots of studios, and there'd be that magnetic strip, on the ground, and you'd be going through, this hotel. So where Mel Brooks is filming a horror film. And so you go through the kitchen, and there's witches, in a cauldron, and there are things coming out of the cauldron, and you meet Quasimodo because he's the bell boy of the hotel, and you even go into the men's bathroom where you see Dracula trying to shave in a mirror, but you can't see his reflection, and Wolfman is combing all the hair on his entire body, and there's Frankenstein in a bathroom stall, and he's reaching underneath the stall because in the stall next to him is the mummy, and Frankenstein has run out of toilet paper. and so one of the reasons Eisner had approached Brooks to do this is because he felt, okay, if we get him involved with this, then he'll be doing films for us. Yeah. So that was the Disney way. So Katzenberg's way was, okay, let's get Burton, because, my gosh, he just had 4 hits in a row, for crying out loud, Who has that? And even if this is the worst film in the world, it'll be a Tim Burton film. We'll make enough money the first weekend, it'll cover everything, And in fact, Katzenberg insisted that the official title, is Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right.
And that is extremely odd to have, the filmmaker's name as part of the title. I don't know if any of your listeners can even pull up, half a dozen that over decades that have been done that way. Now, Burton goes, okay, I'll do this, but it has to be done my way. And Katzenberg at that particular time is, we don't care. We're already going to be successful, because it's Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. That's already the audience. Because Burton at that time was already committed to making the sequel to Batman, Batman Returns. Yeah. So he's already in pre-production for that. And, he also feels that, Disney just doesn't have the talent pool that can make this. So he sets up a studio in San Francisco, which is where Henry Selick lived and did some work. But they also set it up in San Francisco, so it's far enough away from the Disney studios that the Disney executives are not there every day looking over people's shoulders and going, well, maybe the character should be smiling more. Maybe, it's far enough away that he's got some isolation, and he wants to make it in stop-motion puppet animation, rather than as an animated, hand-drawn animated film. And one of the reasons for that is because of his affection for those Rankin Bass holiday specials, and also the fact that he feels that a three-dimensional figure just seems more real.
Yeah.
Than and that when you have somebody in there, with their own hands, moving this and all this, it gives it a greater sense of life, because he grew up, with the King Kong and the Ray Harryhausen films and all that. And one of the great things about King Kong is one of the things that makes King Kong look so alive is that his fur rustles, randomly. And the reason for that is when the animator went in with his fingers, to adjust Kong, they were depressing the rabbit fur. So you're taking a shot, so there's that, but on the next shot, it's back out. And so these things are moving like a real animal, but there was a complete accident of that happening. But anyway, he wants to do this as three-dimensional animation here. And of course, Disney goes, go do this, whatever you want. We'll have a Tim Burton film, and this will also make Disney seem cool, Now the problem is there's that 3-page poem that has just 3 characters in it. Yeah. There is no script. There is no script, and filming has to get started. So Burton has worked with Danny Elfman, magnificent composer, and a lot of people don't realize that Elfman composed the theme song for The Simpsons. That's Danny Elfman. But he's done so much, and of course he had done the music for all of Burton's
Pee-wee's
films.
Big Adventures and Beetlejuice and Batman.
Yeah, that's it. Edward
Not to mention, weird science. We can credit him with that.
And so he gets together with Danny Elfman, and what they do is they write the songs first.
Yep.
They sit down, and Burton is explaining the scenes and what goes on, and then Elfman says, "Get out of my house." And he sits down and writes a song, and then pulls Burton back and listen to this, And Elfman would then play it for his 6-year-old daughter, Molly, before he even showed it to anybody. And if Molly could then, hum back the melody, he knew he had something. And Elfman said, he told Disney, this is not going to be like, Beauty and the Beast and all that, where you have that, breakout song that's going to be on the pop charts and things like that. These songs are used to, reveal the character or forward along the plot. And in fact, he's using as his guide Gilbert and Sullivan and Kurt Weill, who did Three Penny Opera. And so not Broadway musicals or anything like this. And so he's putting together, the songs, before the whole story script actually gets written. And in fact, the very first thing that was animated is the song "What's This?" Because the animators can't wait, for the full script. They've got to start animating because you can only get sometimes 1 minute of animation a week.
Yeah.
Because you've got this figure, and then you move it, and then you take the picture, and then you move it a little bit, and you take it and move it again, and take it a little, and move it. And sometimes there's dozens of characters in the scene that have to be moved. And also they have what is called face replacement.
Yeah.
So like Jack Skellington had almost 100 different faces. So you see the start of the smile, and then the smile gets a little bigger, and there's the smile, and then it's got to go back, and so you're doing all of that. And so they build these massive sets, and they're up on a platform because sometimes the puppeteers had to crawl underneath the set and then just pop up, in a scene to move that figure and then pop back down. And they had people behind the sets doing this and all this. And the sets they've covered with clay and then carved into them. So not only do they look three-dimensional, you get that sort of cross-hatching that effect that you usually get, in a Tim Burton drawing.
Thank you for listening to the Neverland Podcast.
We invite you back next week for more fun and adventure.
Until then, remember to keep a pixie in your pocket.
It's that young at heart, positive attitude that you can share with others.
And remember to visit our website at neverlandpodcast.com.
There you can find links to our news page, our shop,
our contact page, where you can easily send an email to podcast@neverlandpodcast.com.
You can also find our Neverlanders page, where you can find out how to become an official Lost Boy or Pixie, because girls are too clever to get lost.
Become a real Neverlander.
Please feel free to leave us a voicemail at 816-226-6492.
And be sure to follow us on Twitter at NeverlandPcast.
And like our Neverland Podcast fan page on Facebook.
We also have a group on Facebook for you to join.
We also appreciate your support to keep the Neverland Podcast up and running.
Visit patreon.com/NeverlandPodcast to donate to keeping the pixie dust alive.
Copyright content featured on the Neverland Podcast is copyright of their respective creators and used under fair use license.
All original content is copyright of Blue Band Productions And a very special thanks to Yeehaw Bob Jackson at yeehawbob.com for our new ending music.
God bless.
Yeah! Hello, everybody. This is Yeehaw Bob Jackson. Neverland Podcast. We love you. Neverland Podcast. We love you. Neverland Podcast. It's true.